I never expected a quiet evening at home to turn into something I'd regret. At 35, I was living a comfortable life in London, where I worked as an IT consultant. I had recently gone through a rough breakup and was still adjusting to the idea of being single again. My evenings were mostly spent alone, indulging in Netflix marathons or working late into the night. I had little interest in dating, preferring the solitude of my apartment to the complexities of new relationships. Living in a quiet neighbourhood in Chelsea, I rarely interacted with my neighbours beyond the occasional wave or polite nod. It was a peaceful existence, and I liked it that way. But all that changed one evening when Isabel, the wife of my neighbour, unexpectedly knocked on my door. Isabel and her husband, Robert, had moved in a few months earlier. They were a striking couple, both in their early 40s, successful and effortlessly stylish. Isabel, in particular, was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. With her long, dark hair, sharp green eyes, and an elegance that seemed effortless, she exuded confidence and poise. We had exchanged pleasantries a few times, but I never thought much of it beyond the normal neighbourly interactions. It was a rainy Friday evening, and I was settling in with a takeaway and a movie when I heard the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised when I opened the door to find Isabel standing there, an umbrella in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "Hi, Sam," she greeted me with a warm smile. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Oh, Isabel, hi," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "Not at all. Come in. It's pouring out there." "Thanks," she said, shaking off her umbrella before setting it aside. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced, but Robert's out of town for a business trip, and I thought I'd come over and say hello. I brought some wine if you're up for it." I was caught off guard but didn't see any harm in it. After all, we were neighbours, and it was just a friendly gesture. "Sure, why not?" I agreed, smiling. "Make yourself at home. I'll grab some glasses." We settled on the couch, the sound of rain tapping against the windows as we poured ourselves glasses of wine. It felt strangely comfortable, sitting there with Isabel, and the conversation flowed easily. We talked about the neighbourhood, our jobs, and the endless rain that seemed to plague London. "You've got a nice place," Isabel remarked, looking around. "It's cosy." "Thanks," I replied, feeling a little self-conscious. "It's nothing fancy, but it suits me." She smiled, her eyes lingering on mine for a moment longer than necessary. "It suits you," she echoed, her voice soft. There was a brief pause, a moment of silence that felt charged with something unspoken. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to the wine and the warmth of the evening. But as we continued talking, I couldn't ignore the way Isabel was looking at me, her gaze steady, her smile just a little too knowing. As the night went on, the conversation grew more personal. Isabel opened up about her marriage, about the challenges of being married to a man like Robert, who was always busy with work and rarely home. She spoke with a mix of frustration and sadness, her composure slipping as she vented her feelings. "It's like I'm married to his job," she confessed, her voice tinged with bitterness. "He's always travelling, always focused on the next big deal. Sometimes I wonder if he even remembers I exist." I listened, unsure of what to say. It was clear that she was hurting, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her. But there was also something else, a flicker of attraction, of curiosity that I couldn't quite ignore. "I'm sorry, Isabel," I said, my voice gentle. "That sounds really tough." She nodded, taking a sip of her wine. "It is. I didn't think marriage would be like this, you know. I thought we'd be partners, that we'd share our lives. But most days, I feel like I'm on my own." I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of comfort. "You're not alone," I said softly. "You've got friends, family, and hey, you've got me next door if you ever need to talk." She looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you, Sam. That means a lot." Our eyes locked, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. I could feel my heart racing, the air between us thick with unspoken tension. Isabel's gaze dropped to my lips, and before I could fully process what was happening, she leaned in, her lips brushing softly against mine. It was a gentle kiss, hesitant and tentative, but it sent a jolt of electricity through me. I knew I should pull away, should put an end to it before it went any further, but I couldn't. I kissed her back, my hand moving to cup her cheek as I deepened the kiss. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing heavily, our foreheads resting against each other. "Isabel," I whispered, my voice filled with both regret and longing. "We can't do this." "I know," she murmured, her eyes still closed. "But I can't help it." We sat there in silence, the weight of our actions settling over us like a heavy fog. I knew we had crossed a line, that there would be consequences, but I couldn't bring myself to regret it. There was a connection between us, a spark that I hadn't felt in a long time, and it was impossible to ignore. "We should stop," I said finally, though my voice lacked conviction. "This isn't fair to Robert." Isabel nodded, her expression pained. "You're right, it's not fair. But I'm so tired of being lonely, Sam. I just wanted to feel something." I understood what she meant, more than I cared to admit. The loneliness, the longing for connection. It was a feeling I knew all too well. But even so, I knew we couldn't continue down this path. It was too risky, too complicated. "Maybe we just got caught up in the moment," I suggested, though my heart ached at the thought of letting go. "We can just chalk it up to a mistake and move on." She nodded, but the sadness in her eyes told me she wasn't convinced. "Yeah, maybe." We finished our wine in silence, the easy conversation from earlier replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable tension. When Isabel finally got up to leave, she gave me a small, sad smile. "Thanks for the wine, Sam, and for listening." "Anytime," I said, my voice soft. "Take care, Isabel." As I closed the door behind her, I leaned against it, my mind racing with everything that had happened. I knew I had made a mistake, that I had let my emotions cloud my judgment. But the truth was, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. There was a part of me that was glad Isabel had come over, that we had shared that brief, forbidden moment, and that terrified me. The days that followed were filled with a mix of guilt and confusion. I tried to put the kiss out of my mind, to focus on work and keep busy, but it was impossible. Every time I saw Isabel in passing, every time I heard her voice from next door, the memory of that night came rushing back. Then, a week later, I received a text from her. "Hey Sam, I know things got weird last time. I'm sorry if I crossed a line. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, my heart racing. I knew I should ignore it, should keep my distance and let things cool off. But the pull was still there, the temptation too strong to resist. "Sure. Come over tonight." We agreed to meet later that evening, and as the time approached, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I knew we were playing with fire, that we were risking too much, but I couldn't help myself. I wanted to see her, to talk things through and maybe find some closure. When Isabel arrived, she looked nervous, her smile a little too forced. "Hi," she said, stepping inside. "Thanks for letting me come over." "Of course," I replied, closing the door behind her. "Do you want something to drink?" "Just water, thanks," she said, settling onto the couch. I poured us both glasses of water and joined her, the silence between us heavy and awkward. I wasn't sure where to start or how to address what had happened, but I knew we needed to talk it out. "Isabel, about the other night," I began, but she quickly cut me off. "I'm sorry, Sam," she said, her voice filled with regret. "I never should have kissed you. It was wrong, and I don't want to make things more complicated than they already are." I nodded, though my heart sank at her words. "It's okay. We both got caught up in the moment, but maybe it's best if we just move on and forget about it." She looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness. I wish I could forget. But the truth is, I can't stop thinking about you, Sam. I don't know what to do. Her confession hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt a rush of emotions. Confusion, desire, guilt. I knew I should say something, should put an end to it once and for all, but I couldn't find the words. Isabel, I care about you, I said finally, my voice trembling. But this is too messy. I don't want to hurt anyone. She reached out, her hand resting on mine. I know, and I don't want to hurt Robert either, but I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not. I need to figure things out, and I don't know where that leaves us. I squeezed her hand, my mind racing. I knew we were at a crossroads, that we needed to make a decision before things got even more complicated. But the pull between us was still there, stronger than ever. Maybe we just take it one step at a time, I suggested, though I wasn't sure what that even meant. We don't have to have all the answers right now. She nodded, her grip on my hand tightening. Yeah, one step at a time. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. I knew we were treading dangerous ground, that we were risking too much for a fleeting moment of connection. But as I looked at Isabel, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen glances and secret meetings. Isabel and I continued to see each other, though we kept things as platonic as possible. But the tension between us never fully dissipated, and I knew it was only a matter of time before things came to a head. Then, one afternoon, as I was leaving my apartment, I ran into Robert in the hallway. He greeted me with his usual friendly smile, completely oblivious to the turmoil that had been brewing between his wife and me. "Hey Sam," he said, clapping me on the back. "Been meaning to invite you over for dinner sometime. Isabel and I would love to have you." The guilt hit me like a tidal wave, and I forced a smile, nodding along as Robert continued talking. I knew I had to end things with Isabel, to put an end to the secret meetings and the stolen moments. It wasn't fair to Robert, and it wasn't fair to her. That evening, I texted Isabel, asking her to come over. When she arrived, I could tell by the look on her face that she knew what was coming. "Sam, please don't," she said, her voice cracking. "I know what you're going to say, but I can't." "We have to stop this," I interrupted, my voice firm. "It's not right, Isabel. I can't keep doing this." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I know. I'm so tired of feeling alone." "I know," I said softly, pulling her into a hug. "But this isn't the answer. You deserve better, and so does Robert." We held each other for a moment, both of us grappling with the reality of our situation. I knew we had made the right decision, but it didn't make it any easier. Letting go of Isabel felt like losing a part of myself, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. As she left that night, I watched her walk away, the weight of our choices hanging heavy in the air. I knew we had crossed a line, that we had made mistakes, but I also knew that we had to take responsibility for our actions. In the end, I realized that some connections, no matter how intense, are not meant to be. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is let go and learn from the experience. It wasn't the ending I had hoped for, but it was the one we needed. And as I closed the door, I knew that it was time to start over, to find a new path forward, one step at a time,